All right, everyone. Welcome to another week of Blueprint for Peak Performance. Ask Me Anything. I'm Brandy Smith. I'm the founder of Perfect 10 Physical Therapy and Perfect 10 PT Academy, online courses for parents, coaches, and athletes. I am excited this week. We are here to talk about summer training. Um, so for those of you who know me, welcome back. For those of you who don't, I am a physical therapist and performance coach and a former collegiate gymnast. I work with athletes all the way from 3 months old in our 3 months to 5-year old preschool program called Born to Move, as well as I work with athletes all the way up to collegiate and Olympic level gymnast, and I also work with other athletes who do weird things with their body. So I've gone through this whole journey on a whole bunch of different sides, from preschool gymnastics to um, the recreational for fun, all the way into really big goals and dreams, up to world championship teams and Olympic trials and all of that. So in that journey, I've learned a whole lot of things, and I've gotten very blessed to be a part and have a lot of really amazing mentors in a lot of areas. So every week we come here, we have different people who come in and talk, and we also have me. And so we're here to answer all your questions performance related. So this week we are in the middle of summer, and so we are going to talk about summer training and kind of check in on how summer training is going and what it is that we can help you with that maybe summer training has been, because summer training has its own benefits and excitement and really great big new skills and upgrades coming, but it also has its own, how do I say this, pitfalls, its own challenges, its own obstacles to overcome. Anything like we're in Texas, so anything from the heat and hydration and fueling around the heat to training regimens based on this time that's considered off season, sort of, though gymnastics doesn't really have an off season, but it's not competition season. So there's a neural reset that needs to happen at the same time that we're building strength, at the same time that we're doing some upgrades. So I'd love to check in and see how things are going. So come on in, and I'm going to open it up to some questions, thoughts, struggles. And I'm just going to throw the question out, like, how is summer training going? We talked about how the end of school year went, and kids were really lacking motivation and really struggling because there was so much happening at the same time. We're now a few weeks. If you're up way north in the United States, you're just now 1 week finishing up, starting your second week of summer. If you're down here in the South, we are now in like our fourth or fifth week of summer. So there's a little bit of differences across the country where you are in the program. So how are things going? What's the update?
I kind of feel like the kids are all over the place.
I've
Like
noticed
some,
that
yeah, like the teenagers are dragging.
they're
And I wonder,
dragging.
yeah, and I wonder how much of that is due to the fact that they don't have a set schedule anymore.
Yeah.
So they're just vegetables during the day.
Yeah, that's something that I think is something to be thought about, because I've noticed that with several of the teenagers. So I was helping with a mission trip this week at our church, and I noticed that the older teenagers were just kind of zombies. And I was like, are they just staying up all night? So I started kind of wandering around. And I think that one problem that we all have as humans is when we lack structure, right? So our body cycles, like we have our body itself, women in particular have an even more dramatic cycle than men, but every human being has a cycle. And we have a cycle that is annual. We have a cycle that is weekly, and we have a cycle that's daily and hourly, right? And our rhythms, like the rhythm of our cycle, it really relates to when we eat and when we sleep. Like those are two really big factors. And what I'm seeing is a lot of the teenagers, parents get more lax in the summer, vacation happens, so then they go out and they have, a late dinner, or this thing happens. And all of those things affect us. So one thing that I found out recently from another mentor of mine this week, actually, is that our liver is very busy dealing with toxins and all these different things throughout the day. And if we eat past 6 o'clock, our liver doesn't get a break. So like she called it liver time. So like from 10 p.m. to 2 p.m., 2 a.m., 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is like a liver reset time. The liver gets to rest. But if we eat after, because it takes up to 4 hours for all of the stuff that happens when we put food in our body to get to the liver's job. And so if we eat after 6, and she said 7 at the latest, but if we eat after 6, and of course, now this is hard because we have athletes that are training till 8, right? So we'll talk a little bit about that. But in the ideal world, and this is like that perfect ideal cycle, I live my life around the cycle of nature, right? The moon, the sun, the earth, and all of our biorhythms that connect with the very powerful magnetic pull of the earth and the moon and all of that, right? So there is a balance. I feel like we're kind of going down the circle of life, like, oh, I should have like Simba singing behind me. But it's true. It's like actually a really, really true statement. And so she was saying, though, is that by the time all that food hits the liver and the liver does its detoxifying job from everything that we've taken into our body, it's usually 3 to 4 hours after we've eaten. And so, if we're eating after 6, our liver doesn't get a rest, which means now my energy stores don't get a rest, right? So all of my mitochondria, all of my other systems that have to support the liver. So I've got lots of little factories all over there just in charge of producing energy. Those factories have to work to produce energy in order to power the factory of the liver, right? And so this is just one aspect, because then you also have digestion going on too. And so, but she specifically was talking about how from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m. is our like liver time where it needs to rest and restore and heal. And if we're eating late, then it cuts into the liver time rest and restore, because by 2 a.m. it's the body begins its awakening cycle. That's not saying that we're waking up, but there's an awakening cycle that begins inside our body before actual waking hours. And so I found this really interesting. And so then I started thinking about it, and we were talking about summer and the heat of summer and the energy of summer and kind of the chaos of summer that ensues and seems to be ensuing this summer. I don't know about you, Brianne, but are you seeing more chaos this summer than previous years with the kids and lack of focus and kind of just scattered everywhere?
Well, them and me. Like,
Yeah, yeah, adults too. Yeah, no, I'm gonna say, yeah, I'm saying you see it in the kids because we're talking about, but yeah,
right.
everyone, staff, like just all humans seem to be more scattered right now, correct? Yeah, I'm totally seeing that as well, in my sampling of people that come through my world in all my different ways. So definitely that's what's happening right now. And so there are also rhythms and cycles to the world that we're all coming to. And so there are sometimes common denominators that are happening that don't necessarily make sense because I live in one part of the US, you live in a different one, but you're experiencing the same thing I'm experiencing, right? Which is this amount of chaos. So one piece to this though, back to like you were talking about, I wonder if it's because they're in summer and they're off schedule. There's 100% piece to that, because, and so we're going to have to try to help everyone, including ourselves. Because have you also struggled with keeping a schedule this summer?
Yeah, we try
Yeah.
really hard to have one because my kids do much better when there is one.
Yeah.
Uh, it's really not an option not to have one, but holy
But does it
cow,
feel
I feel
harder
like
this
we're
summer?
just chasing, we're just running constantly, trying to do, something comes up and then you got to run and do that. And then you're doing that in the middle of the day. So something else doesn't get done. And then by the time you get to the gym and you've got all the stuff at the gym and the kids are crazy and you don't know who's coming. So you can't even do really, really great planning because you never know who's going to be there.
Yeah.
It's, yeah, attendance is scattered,
Yeah. Attendance has been scattered this year. Yeah.
really scattered. I mean, I get it. Like they need to do their family vacations, they need to do that kind of thing. But wow, sometimes I think even when they're in town, they're not coming. And I don't know why, other than most of them can't drive, right? So they're at the mercy of somebody else. So
Yeah. 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 Did y'all switch summer schedules, or do you have the same after school, after parents
we
get done with work schedule?
we kept after school because yeah, all the later schedules because we had so many parents that couldn't do
Get up.
days.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes sense. Yeah, I was wondering because that can play a role. Like if parents just can't do days because it's like they still have an 8 to 5 job, you know?
Yeah, there's
Um,
no way we can pull that off.
yeah, yeah. Um, so it's interesting. So one thought though is that, and just kind of an explanation of what I think is happening is that when they get off schedule and they stay up late, like I don't have school, right? Or I don't have to get up, and especially your kids because they're training in the evening. So they're like, I don't have anything till 5 p.m., or 4 p.m. And so they just stay up late and then sleep in. But there's a couple really bad factors about that. So one, like I was talking about, liver time. Right? One is that their body's not, because they're staying up late, they're likely eating a snack or something else like at midnight or at 11 o'clock or however late. And that's going to keep their body still running. And then it's going to eat into literally when they go to sleep later because they don't have that window of like time where the body is not processing something and really resting. So their stages, so they could be getting 8 to 10 hours of sleep, and they're just shifting it later. But if they're shifting it later, it doesn't match with their natural rhythm and cycle. And so that's going to affect the abilities of the body to rest and recover. And like even they've done studies on shift work, like people who have to work nights and then turn around and work days later. And it's like awful on the body, right? And so what I think is sort of happening is a shift work situation with sleep with our teenagers, and they're going from a daytime working schedule to a nighttime working schedule. And it wreaks havoc on the heart, on the cardiovascular system. It wreaks havoc on the rest and recovery repair system. It wreaks havoc on the liver, the digestive system. All those systems rely on a cycle. And as much as people don't want to be hippy chicky about it, they also rely on the sun. So there's a lot of studies on people who work nights, right? And then they are asleep during the daylight hours. And it really affects their mental and emotional well-being. And it affects partially because of what we get from the sun is not just things that produce vitamin D, but also things that help us with our neurochemicals. So when the sunlight hits our eyes, even so, one of the things to help with depression is that when you wake up within the first 10 to 15 minutes, or no, wait, I'm sorry, within the first 10 to 30 minutes, you want to get at least 10 minutes of sunlight. And if you can get that, that helps with the release of oxytocin and other neurochemicals in your brain that helps you not have depression, right? It helps you cope with it or not have it at all. It just depends on where you are on the continuum of that. There can be other things. I'm not saying that that solves a depression problem, so no one take that as that. I'm just saying it, but there's studies to show that we need the sunlight to help with our own emotional and mental well-being based on the sunlight itself triggers neurochemicals in our brain. So if you have teenagers who've basically, and then also in shift work, they found, what was it? Reaction time declines, reflexes decline, focus declines, memory declines, other cognitive abilities decline when you go to a shift work schedule where you're sleeping at night or you're working and your waking hours are at night and your daylight hours are your sleeping because you're just not getting we're against the rhythm of the cycle. Now, there are people who are naturally what they call night owls and like, early birds, right? So there is like this wiggle room of it. But in general, human population as a whole, there might be a little wiggle room on one way or the other where you feel more alert at a certain time. Um, but it's not going to be exact opposite of daylight hours. It's just not. And so I think they've kind of turned into like little vampires during the summer, and that's not helping them in a lot of ways. All those things, the cognitive load, the memory, they're not resting and recovering. And then their body's not getting shutdown time because the factories are still working because they're eating late into the night with that time. So there was another piece of that I wanted to talk about though. So sleep disturbances, mental health, cognitive. I had another piece of that. Maybe it'll come in a second. Um, yeah, so one key component is to try to encourage them and their parents to get them on a schedule. Oh, I know what it was. So there's been these studies done on just shifting with 1 hour. So the daylight savings time change, they've done a lot of studies. And just with 1 hour of shift, so you're shifting your sleep cycle 1 hour, it increases your cardiac arrest like risk. So your risk to have a heart attack by 50%, 50 to 60%, depending on what population you're in. But 50% on all, across the board increase in a cardiac event just by shifting your sleep schedule 1 hour with daylight savings. And so that's how impactful our sleep cycle and the consistency of it is. So I don't know. We have a sleep handout that we did for our Born to Move group, but there's a lot of sleep hygiene. Let me get my card. We have a sleep hygiene card. There's a lot of things about sleep hygiene. Um, because we know that in these states where they're doing this, the alarm system is getting elevated. And so then they're coming into the gym and like being, less than helpful. Like they're irritable, they're they're not following I'm guessing you're probably having problems having them following multiple step instructions. Like they're probably, yeah,
Ways to though.
always do.
Like, I
Some
don't
of that's
even know why,
developmental.
yeah, I don't even know why we give instructions because we get done and then every single one of them asks, what do we do here?
Oh, wow. Yeah,
Doesn't matter if you made them demo it, doesn't matter if
yeah.
you all went through it. Like, they get there and it's, what do we do here again?
Well, I can tell you a little tip on that. So even before this sleep structure stuff, you were saying like, oh, it's like, something that's a constant thing. That goes back to the developmental stuff and the nervous system not being regulated and all the stress that all of them are actually under. And some of it they understand they're under stress, and some of it's just an undertone of stress that's following them through their life. So one thought, there's a oh gosh, the name of him is leaving my brain, but he's one of the founders of attachment, the attachment theory. So like learning about attachment and human attachment, secure attachment. He's not I forgot Mary Ainsworth. He's not her. She's the one who did the stranger situation and kind of built out like anxious attachment, secure attachment, disorganized attachment, those kind of things. Um, but her mentor, like two or three before that, the founder of that, um, they they said that you want to collect before you direct. And so what he means by that is you want to create a secure attachment, and you want to be eye level, touching, like all these other things. You want to create a secure attachment, like a good environment, so that now you know you have their whole being paying attention before you direct them with some kind of instruction. So collect before you direct, that's one thing. Part of the collection process, because we have so many kids that are disorganized neurologically, right? And that just means, so that doesn't mean that they don't have a neurological structure that's organized. It means that their alarm system, one of two things, they miss some pieces growing up, right? And their structure's a little loosey-goosey. Or the second piece to that is that they have an organized structure, but the alarm system's so elevated that they don't have access to it at that moment, right? And that's the other thing about attachment is that it can be momentarily. So it's like, do I have a secure attachment at this moment with my athletes? And you can have an anxious attachment or disorganized attachment or detachment, and it's not really healthy or solid at that moment for various reasons, right? Things that they brought in, things that you brought in, an event that just happened right there in front of you. And so creating a secure attachment before you direct them into instructions will help them get more centered. So you're more likely. So I'm not going to say it's going to work with 100%, right? Because there's a lot of different factors, but at least 70 to 80% of the kids, you can get them more involved and more their memory parts of their brain more online, right? Because basically they're offline. And so a piece to that would be to get them down on their belly and do some kind of belly crawling, because that is where our sense of safety and security develop. And so if you can go from belly, and then sometimes you need to go from belly to hands and knees, because they're always spending time upright. So one thought, like maybe this looks like, give me a scenario that it might look like where you're like, I'm giving them instructions and they're just like, coming to you a thousand times. Like what instructions or where are you at in the gym? Are you starting a rotation? Like how does it work? Give me just a general scenario.
It would be at the beginning of a rotation, and it's not like any particular spot, it's all of them.
Sure.
Like the whole, you know how when we went to events and you got there, everybody lined up and they were
Yeah.
ready to pay attention?
Yeah.
If we waited till everybody stood on a line, the event would be over,
Gotcha.
right?
So, yeah.
They can't
So
stand still, they won't line up, they can't quit touching each other. Like,
So a lot of that sounds like some sensory integration stuff, right? And a lot of it also could be an alarm system that's elevated. So the cool thing is with developmental movement stuff, it don't matter. It doesn't matter if it's because they have a sensory processing issue. It doesn't matter if it's because their alarm system's just elevated because they had a fight with their mother on their way in, right? Like fights with mothers is a big deal. Even though everyone's like, oh, it's a tween thing, no big deal. You expect it, it's going to happen. But you have to recognize that a fight with a parent right before practice is very dysregulating because that's their sense of security, especially if they have a really good secure attachment. But even if they don't have a secure attachment, all they're doing is just tapping into their adrenaline cortisol system. And they're way up here. And when they're up there, they don't have access to their memory. They don't have access to focus. They don't have access to impulse control. They don't have access to, paying attention to tasks. They don't have access to, um, how do I say this? I mean, impulse control is part of it, but like the ability to sit still, right? Because their nervous system's still moving out all the energy from whatever happened before they came in. Um, so I recommend regular alarm system resets, like at every rotation. And transition points are difficult for people, period. So most humans, when they get into a flow of something, if they have to stop it and start something else, it's a transition. And everyone has some level of struggle to transition from one thing to the next. But when you have a kid that's dysregulated or that doesn't have a secure attachment or is not, how do I say this, centered or grounded, right? Or any of those other things we talked about, they're tired, like they're dysregulated because they're tired. They're dysregulated because there might be a lot of reasons they're dysregulated, but we'll just call it dysregulated. And that's the umbrella of they may come in with a sensory processing issue. They may come in with they didn't develop a full nervous system issue. They may come in with they haven't been sleeping. They put themselves on a night schedule where their waking hours are at night and they're sleeping 8 to 10 hours into they're waking up at noon or later, and all of those things dysregulate the nervous system. So for me, I just look at it as like it's a dysregulated nervous system, right? Um, so the cool thing about developmental movement patterns is that it doesn't matter which one of those things, it's going to make all of those things better. Better doesn't mean gone. It just means better. And the more consistently you can add in developmental movement stuff between events, so it's a regular dosing. It's like a dosing schedule. You're going to dose them with developmental movement throughout your workout so that you go, oh, reset the nervous system. Oh, reset the nervous system. And it can be customized when you see an athlete that's like, oh, that's dysregulated. They just had a really hard fall. Hey, why don't we just do a little crawling? I want you to do a mental set, do some breath work, then go again. Like you can use it as an acute, what we call acute, which is like a customized, there's a situation, we should do something to regulate that one nervous system. But I think it's better and more effective. And yes, you do need to do that, right, with people. But I think to get the group as a whole, it is more effective to just have set developmental movement dosings throughout workout so that you're just resetting the whole group. Because oh, it just takes one bad apple. Well, it's the same thing. We have mirror neurons. So you have that one, I don't want to call it a bad apple, but that one athlete who uh, has a dysregulated moment. They have mirror neurons, and so you have some athletes that are more sensitive to other athletes' energies, and all of a sudden they get pulled along. And the next thing you know, 70% of your beam rotation is spent, you know, touching each other, dabbling, talking, drinking water, throwing a fit, being angry at the beam, like you name it, right? But it's all behaviors that aren't really effective towards the outcome that you're looking for, right? So what I would look at or what I would think about is how can I transition them on their bellies from one event to the other? Like, or on their hands and knees, or a little bit of both. And so what that might look like is you're going from floor to beam, maybe your beams are real close to the floor and it's not too horrible. Then maybe they have to do belly crawls from the floor to the beam. And then maybe you make them go underneath different levels of beam. So like I change the heights of the beams. Like I try to make them so you have a low beam that's only so high up off the ground that they have to like get on army crawl, but correct army crawl, and I'll show you in a little bit, on their belly underneath that low beam. And if you got a medium beam, throw a few 8 inchers underneath it so that they have another space they have to crawl. Now they have to figure out and say you can't get off your belly. This is fun. Get from underneath the low beam on your belly to over the 2 or 3 8 inchers you had to stack up to get the medium beam to be low, and figure out how they can do that staying on their belly. It's hard, and they'll have to figure it out, and they may not be perfect at it, but because you're making them think about how to figure out how to get up there, you're regulating the nervous system. And because they're on their belly, you're activating the low brain, which is the reptilian brain, which is our fight, flight, or freeze, our sense of safety, our sense of security in the world. And then you can even have them get on their hands and knees and crawl underneath the next two beams on their hands and knees, right? So maybe they're not as high or whatever, or not as low, and they're a little higher. And you can just crawl on your hands and knees. So what you're taking them from is on their belly, emotional regulation part of their brain, into on their hands and knees, which is your midbrain. Oh, I'm sorry. I just said that wrong. I got ahead of me. My brain's going too fast. Okay, so on your belly, the low part of your brain, which is your sense of safety and security in the world, and then get them onto their hands and knees, and you go into their emotional centers in the midbrain for emotional regulation. So now you've regulated the two parts of the brain just through movement that should take like 5 minutes. Maybe less. But I promise you, if you take the 5 minutes to do that, you're going to get better, So then after they've crawled, maybe you're at the end and you make eye contact, touch their shoulder, and say, I want you to come sit over here. Good job. And you're just making some eye contact, and you're doing some, and positive reinforcement for what they just did. Oh my God, that was so awesome. I loved how you just crawled underneath the low beam so well. Oh, I loved how you really, connected your hips and your pelvis. It was so good, such a great job. You did awesome. And laughing with them and whatever, like laughter, eye contact, positive, genuine, positive, authentic. Find something you liked about what they did, right? With the behavior. And touch them as they go. So there was some research studies that shows that if you touch a child while asking them a question that they need to be honest on, you'll get a 90% increase on honesty if you're touching them when you ask them the question. So what that tells us is the touch gives them a sense of security and presence, because they can't be in their creating mind to like create a lie, right? They can, 90% improvement, right? But it's more difficult. So I would add a little touch while they transition over to their line, and then see if you can get them more centered. And then depending on your group, you have to kind of consider how many sensory processing disordered kids do you have? Because those kids who are having processing issues, having it written down may be helpful with a picture. You have to recognize that not everyone is an auditory learner. Right. And so sometimes the way we give instructions creates chaos. Their brain gets overloaded and they just go to a behavior like touching their friend or shutting you out, avoiding it, talking to someone instead of listening because they don't get it anyways, right? Like it's just too hard to process. It's overwhelming to the nervous system. So center the nervous system and collect before you direct, right? So touch them, get them over, maybe bring them instead of the long line, bring them into a little semicircle, like a semi-line circle, so that we're all in, and maybe everyone has to put a hand on a shoulder. And we've become, because what happens when you put someone in a group, like there is, I don't think we realized this when we were in college, but if you look, like even with the World Cup going on right now, and you look back at the Olympic trials and Olympics, what does every team do when they get to an event or before they leave an event? They get into a huddle and they get arms around, hands here. They're touching each other and they're in a circle. Neurologically, that is a sense of safety. You're using the touch system and you're using this closeness, right, of the team to regulate. And you'll notice there's been like World Cup, a lot of prayers in those circles and that kind of stuff. You're self-regulating in whatever direction you want to go. So when they're praying and getting ready to go, I remember we did this in college too. We would pray and then we would start chanting, right? What we're doing is we're building the energy and we're what we didn't know we were doing, but I know we're doing is we're bringing in that neural, or using the mirror neurons to get all of us on the same energy plane, the same like zone, the same place. And the World Cup's been a great place to see that, right? So I think athletes naturally do this, but they do it at a meet when there's like something happening, like it's really big, but we're not practicing this in practice. And so when you go to do instructions and that old school, like let's line them up, it sounds great because it looks pretty from the outside. But what are we doing when we line them up? We're actually creating individuality. Like I'm individually looking at one of you, I'm giving you the assignment, like you're separate from me, right? Which is not a sense of safety. You're separate from me. So getting them in that semicircle, doing a huddle at every event, that might help also bring in regulation. Now you're going to have a couple kids that the huddle is overwhelming for them. So allow them to have a hand in and back out a little, right? You have to kind of meet each nervous system where they are and just understand that, yeah, that makes sense. That kid, like not just that makes sense, like it's a preference for, but that preference likely has a reason based on their nervous system. So creating a space where, and maybe the first time everybody's not holding like this, maybe they hold hands and they're a little bit of space out. Maybe, but you're going to have some that are like, let's get into sardines, and that makes them feel safe. But then you have others that are overwhelmed still and their nervous system's not ready for it yet. Now, as you do it more regularly, I think gradually they'll come into it, but giving them an option to have a hand in or touch someone else's shoulder and be out of the circle, but still be a part of it, open the circle a little bit, like whatever we need to do to accommodate those nervous systems that are going to get overwhelmed.
Yeah. I would be the one that's half out of the circle, so I totally understand that one.
Yeah.
Put them on
Yeah.
the end, maybe.
Yeah, put them on the end. Like you'll, yeah, I think it's something you know your athletes enough to know, and then once you preface this for them that it's coming and you do it repetitively each time, they'll find their spots, that they like. So it doesn't, I guess what I'm trying to say, even though I'm saying bring them in,
Mhm.
so it doesn't have to be so rigid. So like for instance, we're like, okay, line everybody up. When I'm saying bring them in, it doesn't have to look uniformed. It doesn't have to look everyone doing exactly the same thing. Just needs to look like we're all connecting into a circle of some sort. So you might
Mhm.
want to bring them in when you do the instructions. The other thing you might look into is either a small dry erase board, right? That you can carry with you or that you can set onto something. And maybe you have Velcro spots at each rotation where you can Velcro it up and just pull it off and then y'all can travel with it. But when you're giving the instructions, you can write it and draw some kind of picture next to it. Because sometimes written word is not completely received unless it has an image that goes with it. So I'm just trying to think of how can you accommodate all the different learning styles and nervous systems and
Right.
kind of one easy go at it. So I would do some kind of transition, give yourself like a 5-minute transition at each rotation. And in that transition, I would put them on their bellies, crawling underneath things, and then on their hands and knees, crawling underneath things. And then I would make sure I get some touch in there from you with eye contact and follow it up at the same time, because those three together create a space for learning. The learning is enhanced when you have physical touch, eye contact, and vocalization together. And so I would touch them as they come by, make eye contact, and find something for each kid that you really loved about what they did. I loved how you transitioned so quickly. And you can implement little things that you're wanting to implement. Like, I loved how you transitioned so quickly from the last event, right? You did such a great job of being on time because maybe that's one of the cultural things you want to build in your gym is being on time or being transitioning well from one event to the other. Um, you look so, I love how ready you look for Beam now, right? Like whatever you see, give them that feedback and then get them into their semicircle and let that look however it's going to look. Maybe it's a full huddle, maybe it's a semicircle, maybe they're holding hands, maybe they're touching shoulders. Kind of play with your athletes to figure out what that looks like, but you're creating a container, and that container is a sense of safety. And then in that, everyone takes a good, nice breath. Let's just take 3 breaths together, just 3 breaths. And then assignment 1, 2, and 3. But maybe you don't go past 3. And depending on the age, maybe you just do 1. And you say, when you're done with that, let me know. But I would write it, say it, and have a picture.
Right.
What do you think about that? Does that
Yeah.
feel Now I hit like the whole like what it could look like. You might take pieces of that.
Right.
But I would get them for sure. We know getting on your belly and on your hands and knees is going to help regulate their nervous system. But there's a lot of stuff about attachment and creating secure attachment that I threw in there. And that's where that collect and direct is.
Right.
And then the other pieces of like how much information to give and how we present it is
Right.
more motor learning based on this sensory processing.
Yeah. Because I tell my coaches all the time, most of our kids are either visual or kinesthetic learners. So if you're only giving them directions by words, you're missing all of them. They don't understand a thing you are doing. So, yeah. But that's
Yeah,
like everyone's preferred method of instruction is to tell them what to do when they're none of them are that kind of learner. Like,
very few, very, very few. Um, yeah. And that also might be another thing that, because depending on time constraints, instead of, that's the other thing. So I remember I was at my daughter's school and they did an obstacle, it was a relay race thing, and they gave instructions for like this 11-step thing. And then when they went to get there, none of the kids could do any of it. And I was like, well, yeah, it was way too many steps. You gave instructions for all of it at one time. And your instructions were demos of you doing it, not them. So one thought, and I do this often with athletes, is the first 1 to 3 things don't count. Like I don't care. I'll count them as part of their assignment. Like I not how do I say this? They count. I let them count towards their assignment because I want them to have positive rewards for it. So if we're going to do 20, I account for the fact that the first 3 are not going to look what I want them to look like. It's okay. But I count them because when you say that negative stuff, that didn't count. You didn't hit the thing, right? That's a negative feedback toward, and you're giving them negative feedback while asking them to do the next thing you want. You're not going to, like the science tells us, you're not going to get that. It's not going to be as effective. But if I just say, oh, it's the first 2, great, you went for it, you're figuring out your body. Oh, that was too far, great. Then figure out, okay, now that's the other way. Okay, I know you're going to find middle in the next 2 or 3. Keep going. That's 3. Let them count it. So that positive counting helps, right? So then they don't feel defeated going into number 4 and now they're starting number 1. Do you see what I'm saying? It's a self-defeat if you keep saying that doesn't count until. So what I'm saying though is that maybe you spend less time on demoing every single station or every single thing and more time on just maybe you find you have to do 1, right? Just so that they know what they're doing. Or maybe there's a picture next to the station. That's another really good one. Um, and instead, let them try the first 3 to experience the movement themselves. Do you
yeah.
follow?
Mhm.
Like creating your station, when you create an assignment, think about just see how that changes your approach when you're like, okay, look, the first 3, they're going to just be figuring out whatever I'm asking them to do, right? So this is the drill. The first 3, they're just going to figure out the drill. Okay, so granted that, I want to see at least 5 really good ones. We're going to do 8. right? And then they get an award, they get to count the first three, even if they're not perfect. Um, and you start to set the expectations across the board that you're experiencing the movement, you're experiencing the drill I asked you to do, and then help them find, use your coaching techniques, right, to help them find. But often the drill, once it's done, right, the drill should put them in the position. The spot should put them in the position. When I do band work, that's the whole reason we do the band work. The resistance, when they don't make it to vertical, the band pulls them down. When they go past vertical, the band pulls them down. So then they figure it out by the third or fourth one and like, oh, this is straight. Yeah, yeah. And then I can refine it verbally or with like, spots of some sort. Do you follow?
Mhm.
How does that feel when you think about that? Like that idea of like, because what you said was something that I think I used to do too, and I think coaches typically do it, is you'll demo, like how many stations will you demo out at the very beginning? Like five or more?
It depends what event, but
Yeah.
and I've even used the kids to like I use the kids to demos and I leave them there so at least they should know what they're doing on their first one.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't even know that. It's like, well, what did you just show everybody? But I've been toying with the ideas of pictures as markers for a while.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple ways you can do it. So you can have those cones. So I created just these, it's really simple. It's like it says, I did this for my preschool program. So it's like station one, and then the name of it, which is supposed to be sort of descriptive, right? And then a little written something that's short and brief that says what they're doing. And then a little picture. It's usually just a stick picture of like what the station is, right? Um, and you can either Velcro those down. So I put Velcro on the back of it. You can put them down on the floor, or you can have cones and have a little stick that you put Velcro on, and then you can change them out.
Yeah.
And the stick is in the cone.
We've done cards too. And I kind of like that one because then I'm like, everybody pick a card. And then it's not, I want this station, I want that station. They get it by chance and then they don't argue as much too.
So actually, remember the game stuff we did? That's
Mhm.
like very game-like, right? So
Mhm.
that's actually really cool because they feel like they have a little bit of autonomy. So you actually might get more work out of them by
Yep.
drawing cards. So you could have
Mhm.
all the cards here and then they just have to pick a card and they just have to make sure they get a different card each time they come and draw a card. Yeah,
Yep.
that's an easy one. I like it. But I do think their learning styles and how we present, we need to make sure that we have verbal, visual, and experiential in there. And whenever giving instructions, if you can have eye contact with touch while you're vocalizing the instruction, and tone of voice really matters. Like that we're, excited and calm about it. We're not judgmental or frustrated, right? Which can happen very easily when, five kids didn't know their station. Um, yeah. Yeah, give that a try.
I'm going to.
Yeah, I love it. Um, as far as helping promote schedule, I mean, is it the 14 and or the 12 and up that you're seeing it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I think it might be worth a conversation with them, and their parents, because it's, um, when they don't have the structure, it's really not good on all the bodily systems. And
Right.
so they're kind of going into school, like the school year, stressed already. Like they're
Mhm.
supposed to be recovering right now in summer.
Right.
And when they do this shift, nervous system, body wise, they're not in rest and recovery because they're not promoting that, um, which is going to continue to lead to an anxious generation. And we
Yep.
have we have so many anxious kids now, and there are a lot of factors to that: devices, social media, social pressures. Like because of the social media, the interactions with friends has changed to things that are not very positive often. The group texting is not a positive thing at all. texting in general is like I'm texting another device instead of another human. And so the language that's used, and there's a lot of teaching that's having to be done around all of this. And I think in the next 5 years, there's going to be it's going to look different. Devices are going to look different in 5 years because of all these court cases going on right now and all the science behind it. There are some really big names going to Congress now with the scientific research behind it. And so states are starting to remove even Chromebooks out of schools and stuff. Um, so the first step was to lock down the cell phones during school hours, which happened in Texas. Texas is one of the most conservative, places. And so there are a lot of other states that have done that as well, just this last year and the year before. So I think the device situation is going to start to change. But we're dealing with nervous systems that are already heightened from all of this stuff, on top of the fact that between 12 and 18, their bodies are being rushed with so many hormones. Everything's new, and their brain is getting rewired intentionally to help to build them to be independent by 18 to 20, right? And that rewiring takes resources from the body. So I think that's the piece is we really have to pay attention to the fact that our children are actually working very hard.
Mhm.
And when their schedules get super shifted like that, we're adding another tax to them. Like we're taxing them, literally. We're pulling from their bank. Um, and we're letting them pull from their bank. That's the hard part. Because some of it's like, well, the kids just want to stay up. And it's like, yeah, but we as an adult need to create a boundary that it's not okay. And we need to explain to the kids why. So it's like, I don't know if I mean, it seems like as a team, it might be helpful. And I always like to, instead of like, because you can't really lecture, but like have them have an experience of feeling dead. Like they come into workout, they're unmotivated, they're dying. You're trying to give them maybe conditioning or something, and they're just all dying. And then you gather them up and you go, how are you guys feeling right now? Relate it to them so they can
Mhm.
feel what their body feels like and just say, I know it's really hard. For me, it's hard in the summer too, to keep a schedule. And it's so easy to just sleep in till noon because I don't have anything till 4, like kind of throw in a personal story to where they start to buy in and relate. And you go, but when we do that, it really affects our body systems. It affects how we sleep. It affects how we recover. It affects how we train. It affects how we digest food, which is the fuel that I need in order to recover and to be strong and to do. And you can say, wrap it back up to the conditioning you were just doing. In order to do that, my body has to eat this fuel and digest it, and I have to sleep to rest and recover in order to do something with it and build the muscles. And this is our time. This is your time to be strong. Like summer is their time to build strength that will pay off in the competition season. And so kind of bringing it back to their why, like, if you're wanting to really compete well, and this works well for the competition group, right? For the rec group, they're not competing, right? But they're also not training as many hours, so they can come in 1 hour and kind of be okay for an hour to an extent, right? But wrap it back to their why of why they're there in the gym, but explain to them a little bit of the science on a very, layman's term way. And then just see if any one of them can pick, like maybe create a challenge. And with their challenge, a lot of them probably have watches, I don't know, but you could create a challenge because they're going to have proof that they slept. But you could create a challenge and say, for anyone who can, go to bed before 10 p.m., right? So the cutoff is 10. It's really you get 2 extra points. That was one of the things I was going to go down. For every hour before midnight, you get 2 extra points towards sleep. So sleep is not all created equal. Anything before midnight is double the credit. Anything after midnight is just 1 point. So if they can go to bed at 10, they're now already racking in 4 points before they even go to bed. So you can make a challenge. Like let's do a team challenge and pick a reward that they really want. Like maybe it's ice cream, like a popsicle party after workout, or maybe it's they get to pick something in training, like maybe have a group pick something that everybody wants and say, hey, if all of you, and maybe make it realistic because you probably can't do 100%, right? But it's like if 80% of you guys can go to bed by 10 p.m. for the next 4 workouts in a row, make it realistic. And then we'll do this thing. But then the point is, you've already showed them what they've experienced right now when they're tired. You couldn't get through my conditioning I gave you. You're tired, you're cranky, y'all are at each other's throats, right? Write that down somewhere. Date it. This is this team and this is how it happened. And then create a challenge that they're cool with and make it reasonable so that they can actually be successful. So like 4 days, because you have to recognize also they've been off schedule for a while. So it might take them a week to get 4 days before 10. It could take them 7 days to get 4 days before 10. And and then when they complete it, give the reward, but with the reward, draw it back in and maybe you pull out the same conditioning that they failed at before. And you say, oh my gosh, you guys were able to condition. Did you guys notice the difference? How's your energy level? Maybe the ones who are like, when they're dying, you ask them an energy level question, like, what's your energy level feel like right now from 0 to 10, 10 being the fullest and 0 being, I can't move off the mat, right? And then have them do the same conditioning again after they've had their 4 days of good sleep and 80% of them do better. Have them rate their energy. And then you notice all the good things, like you jumped so much higher, you completed all 20 of them, like whatever you notice in their performance, and bring it back to their why. And then it's all a big lesson that's experiential for them to feel what it feels like when they have a sleep schedule. And there's a whole nother thing about food schedule too, which is really hard because a lot of those parent kids are now at home during the day. If they don't have a camp or something going on, they're at home during the day with no one telling them when to eat. And so that's also hard. So that's a whole nother factor. I would start with sleep, but then, if you can get a good behavioral change going in sleep, then you can start to work on food and like, pick one meal, maybe just yeah, I was trying to think of what the best option is. Like, but pick one meal in the day. Like if workouts at like 4, make sure that they had a snack and lunch, and for 80% of them that have snack and lunch, snack within 30 minutes before practice and lunch, between 12 and 2, give them a window, I guess, 12 and 1 would be better. But, then you'll get some kind of, and do the same thing. And how do you feel when you're fueled versus when you're not, right? Because at this age, unless they experience it, you're just kind of talking at them. So you want to like create an experience, like like maybe you already know, right? You already know what you can do, that they're going to all be dying, right? Yeah. So I would just let it play out. And instead of trying to push them through to do it, I'd point out, what is your energy level? How do you feel right now? Let them complain about it. Give them a piece of paper, write it down, date it, gather all the papers, staple them together. I want to challenge you guys. Do you guys like feeling like this right now? No. Do you want to feel like this during season? Heck no. Right? Okay, well, now is our time. We're actually building the building blocks, the foundation for season. Now's the time when the strength you build now is what we're going to use in season. Because we're not going to be building it in December. If I build your strength during December, you're not going to be able to do routines. I'm building your strength right now. We're building endurance right now. Strength and endurance are being built in the summer. And, if you can't do these things, then it's going to affect your season. So yeah, I don't know. You have to create an experiential thing. How does that sit with you? What do you think? Because your athletes better than I do. Right.
Yep, they're definitely have to feel stuff and process it. So
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is set them up to fail. you know, someone might think that's really silly or whatever, like that's horrible. But what I'm saying is set them up knowing that these are things that are really hard for them and that they're not sleeping and their schedule's off, and let them experience the failure in practice. Don't berate them for it. Don't yell at them for it because that's not going to help, right? But bring it to their attention and then let them rate it and then ask them, do you want this in season? And why are we really here in the summer? Ask them if they even know the purpose of summer training.
Right.
I bet 70% of them don't even know that the purpose of summer training is to get stronger and build endurance and dabble. If you can master, great, but really you're dabbling and getting into the intermediate phase of upgrades. You're not going to master an upgrade till August, you're between August and October, right? Depends on the level of the upgrade.
Right.
And some of the upgrades with like my higher levels, they won't master them till like February, March, and they're just dabbling, right? And you're just dabbling in them because you're building the undersurface, like root of summer is build strength and endurance. And that foundation is built, though you can't build strength and endurance without recovery.
Right.
And that recovery word means sleep and food, fuel, right? So yeah, I would let them fail, and then give them a challenge. And the reward has to be good, and the challenge has to be doable. So yeah, I mean, like if you think about sleep, it's going to take you know, up to 7 days to get 4 days of going to bed before 10. It's a good 3 day shift or more, depending on how many hours they've shifted themselves off,
Right.
you know. And the only thing would be like if you have to go by the honesty system, or if you have to go by like if they have watches or phones that have sleep apps, you could have everyone, there's a free sleep app that like regulates people. But some parents don't want phones in their there's I don't want phones. I don't like phones in the bedroom. But I'm just trying to think of like how you can actually keep them honest. But you also could see in their performance whether they're sleeping. So
Yeah.
you could just create an honesty system because personally, I don't like the EMF waves and also just the research on a phone being next to you. The brain is still concerned about the phone and it's not sleeping. So so I don't really like the idea of putting a phone to help regulate their sleep. Um, but you could do the honesty system and just explain to them, I'm gonna know because you won't be strong. You'll still be dying in practice if you don't have. So you could create an honesty system. But yeah, sleep and fuel, that's where I would look at for behavioral changes if the teens are struggling. But I would also send out some kind of handout to the parents or just print a printout, whatever's the easiest way to communicate to your parents, and just explain to them like, you know, summer can be hard, the shifts in the schedules are hard, like recognize the problem. Um, but we'd really like to try your athletes to keep a consistent schedule. It's better for their heart health, their recovery for workout. We're trying to build strength and they can't recover during summer if they don't have a consistent sleep and food schedule. So kind of get the parents involved in like a little bit of education about it. But also the kids need to also be educated. But loop the education to experience instead of just like coming to a lecture. I think that'll help. I hope that helps. Was that helpful, Brianne?
Yeah. Thank you.
You're welcome. This was great stuff. Yeah, this is the biggest challenge I think in summer, and I think it's a big challenge in the world right now. There just does seem to be we're having to buckle down and create structures for ourselves, um, and it's not easy for most. There's a small percentage of people that are really good at structure. Other people are good at following structures that are put in for them. And then there's another group of people that just don't like structure at all and they want to run away from it and do everything opposite of rules and regulations. So so you kind of have to meet all those people where they are. But yeah, summer is the time to try to buckle down on at least maintaining a routine. There might be some flexibility in the routine, right? But creating a routine that they can stick to, especially around food and sleep. So
Yep.
all right. Well, thanks for joining us this week. Give it a try. I'd love to hear how it goes next week. Let me know what you come up with. So between your transitions, right? So we talked about transitioning and getting an instruction giving. And then we also talked about the sleep and routine of summer, helping people get back on it. All right, my friend. I look forward to talking to you next week. I want us to hear how it goes.